This is WAB's Week in Review, the show where we look back the last few days of stories from your WAB News team. I'm Alex Helmick, managing editor of WAB News. And we start today with several Republican state lawmakers and candidates pushing to eliminate the state income tax. That's currently 5.19%. But that is responsible for half the state budget. WAB's Raul Bali told us how a state Senate committee is approaching the decision.
Lawmakers voted that their eventual final recommendation would not include raising the state gas tax or adding a state tax on groceries or property. That leaves the discussion surrounding sales tax. Democratic State Senator Nan Orrock of Atlanta posed a similar question to presenters from states that rely on them.
Are you familiar with the regressive tax policy, which everybody paying the same rate means that the lower income families are bearing a heavier burden?
Republicans on the committee argued the state income tax makes Georgia uncompetitive against states with no state income tax. Raul Bali, WABE News.
Questions for Georgia-based companies and workers remain after the Trump administration announced changes to the visa program for skilled workers. As WAB's Molly Samuel told us, this past weekend caused chaos for people who are here on H-1B visas.
Last Friday, President Donald Trump signed an executive action creating a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas that would go into effect that weekend. It sent people scrambling.
It was a nightmarish weekend.
Atlanta-based attorney Anita Ninan specializes in U.S. business immigration. She says things are calmer now since federal officials put out more guidance saying the fee doesn't apply to current visa holders. But she says there are other possible changes coming for the program in the next year, such as raising the wages. And the new steep fee could have an effect on small and medium-sized companies, unless the U.S. can improve its pipeline of homegrown STEM professionals.
There is merit in getting these skilled professionals contributing to the U.S. economy in really critical sectors like technology, healthcare.
Especially because these highly trained workers are relatively mobile, able to work, for instance, in rural hospitals that have a hard time recruiting specialists. But the picture is different for big tech companies, for example, which can operate from anywhere. Professor Jagdish Sheth works at Emory's Goizueta Business School. He says employers can get around the fee and visa changes by just opening more offices elsewhere or hiring contractors in India, which is where most H-1B visa holders are from.
If you're looking for gold, go to the place where there's a gold mine.
Though he says that means the United States would miss out on all those talented people who might otherwise have pursued moving to the U.S. And that, he says, is a loss for America. Molly Samuel, WABE News.
Georgia's Hispanic business leaders are calling for better opportunities for legal immigration. As we just mentioned, it comes on the heels of President Trump's abrupt decision to add a $100,000 fee on H-1B visas. WAB's Marlon Hyde reported the story.
Veronica Maldonado-Torres is the president and CEO of the Georgia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
A new analysis by Ford found that a recent proposed immigration policies would drive up the cost of living for every American family by more than $2,100 each year.
And for Georgia,
we would lose an estimated $7.7 billion annually.
Maldonado-Torres was joined by representatives from various Hispanic chambers of commerce around the country. All of them called for the current administration to create better ways for business owners to obtain work permits for foreign workers. Business leaders have also called for a path to citizenship for workers living long-term in the U.S. Jefferson Dominguez runs his own construction company and has been in business for more than 25 years. He says immigrants fill the workforce gaps in his industry.
There's not enough people here to do the job, and we need some more people.
Dominguez believes that without proper ways for workers to come legally to the U.S., we will see worsening shortages in industries such as construction and hospitality. Marlon Hyde, WABE News.
Well, Georgia will now have to do more to track food insecurity in the state following cuts to a federal program by the Trump administration. WAB's Dormaya Vance explained.
The administration recently ended the USDA's Household Food Security Reports, which track national data on hunger. States will now have to rely on other tracking methods like participation in SNAP benefits. Georgia's Department of Human Services says almost 1.4 million people are enrolled in the Supplemental Nutrition Program. USDA officials say the reason for ending the household food security reports was due to them being, quote, redundant, costly, politicized, and extraneous, and seeing minimal changes in food security data. The move is a part of a large spending bill signed by President Donald Trump that also changed SNAP's rules, placing recipients under new work requirements, among other changes. Dormaya Vance, WABE News.
The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, is continuing to send funds to Georgia as the state recovers from Hurricane Helene and Tropical Storm Debbie last year. WABE's Christopher Alston had this update.
FEMA says it sent over $49 million to more than 100 projects across the state in September. Some of the largest grants include nearly $5 million to Irwin EMC to replace poles and transformers, $4 million to the Georgia Department of Defense for search and rescue, and $3 million to Tattnall County to clear nearly 250,000 cubic yards of storm debris. Other funds are helping local governments like Douglas and Warren County restore power and reopen public roads. The Georgia Department of Transportation is also receiving support to repair damaged highways. In total, Georgia has now received more than $798 million in federal recovery aid since the storms. Christopher Alston, WABE News.
Well, it's been a year since Hurricane Helene rampaged through the center of Georgia. It quickly became one of the deadliest and most damaging hurricanes in state history. As we just heard, the hardest hit areas are rebuilding, and many people are changing how they prepare for the next storm. WABE's Emily Jones had more.
When Helene slammed into Valdosta, it joined a litany of disasters that had struck the area. It started with Hurricane Idalia in August 2023.
Then in February of 24, we had a tornado.
Ashley Ty is Lowndes County's emergency management director. In March of 2024, a straight-line wind event hit, followed by flooding in April. Then in August,
Tropical Storm Debbie, Hurricane Helene, which was, Idalia on steroids. And then in November, we had another major flooding event.
Ty says it was starting to feel biblical.
We were kind of joking, what's next? The plague of locusts? Well, no, what was next was a snowstorm of the century for our area.
The impacts of those storms added up. Strong winds battered buildings already damaged by Idalia. Debris from Helene made the later flood worse. And the effects of the storms go beyond the physical and financial.
Anytime that the skies turn gray or there's, ominous forecast, people get a lot more anxious.
The regular threat of hurricanes has been an adjustment for the area, around 2 hours from both the Gulf and Atlantic coasts. But seas superheated by climate change are strengthening hurricanes, meaning Lowndes County and other inland communities are more at risk. So county officials are learning how to cope. In Lowndes, they're building up a network of local resources so they don't have to wait on unpredictable federal help. And they're shifting their storm prep advice based on the disasters they've experienced.
The rule of thumb is, be prepared to be without power. What we would say was 48 hours, 3 days.
Megan Barwick is the county's public information officer. It can take longer to restore electricity in rural areas, with the houses spread far apart and downed trees blocking many roads. After Helene, she says, they know to be prepared for longer power outages.
I was without power at my home for 14 days.
Helene also taught a cruel lesson in preparedness in Columbia County near Augusta. There, an overnight shift in track brought the storm straight into a part of the state that wasn't expecting it.
We all went to bed thinking that we were probably going to get a lot of heavy rain, maybe some wind, but we weren't expecting a hurricane to hit us.
County Manager Scott Johnson says many people weren't just caught unawares that night. Living even farther from any coastline, they hadn't prepared for a hurricane to hit ever, despite the official advice to have emergency supplies on hand.
We can say all those things, but it took us living through it to really understand that you really need to do all those things.
The storm utterly devastated Columbia County, not only damaging houses, knocking down trees, and taking out power and internet lines, but even taking local radio and TV stations fully offline.
So for many days, we had no way to communicate with loved ones to let them know we were okay.
With one exception. The county's own broadband network, with all its lines buried underground, never lost service. That kept emergency services online and meant people could access public Wi-Fi hotspots. Johnson says that was a critical lesson from the storm.
So the county has expanded our public Wi-Fi system.
Now he says he's encouraging other counties to set up similar systems.
And I would really encourage all local governments to have some kind of redundancy, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to strike your community.
For his own part, Johnson says he now has a backup generator and emergency supplies of food, water, gas, and cash, because he never wants to be caught unprepared again. Emily Jones, WABE News.
This story is part of a partnership with Grist. You're listening to WAB's Week in Review with me, Alex Helmick. Well, Clayton County and state officials announced this week that they're building a $19 million behavioral health crisis center in South Atlanta. WAB's Lily Oppenheimer had the story.
Officials say for too long, the area has lacked sufficient care for people suffering from mental health issues. They say the facility will provide 24/7 access to a clinical team to determine care, observation, and stabilization needs. People with behavioral issues or withdrawal needs will be clinically assessed. They say the facility will also provide some relief for hospital workers and law enforcement. There's still no set location or construction timeline. State officials say a third-party study concluded that Georgia needs 8 new crisis centers by 2032, with immediate need in Metro Atlanta. Lily Oppenheimer, WABE News.
Peachtree Corner residents remain divided over whether to create their own police force, leaving millions of dollars on the line for the Gwinnett County Police Department. WABE's Shemaine Cruz explained.
Peachtree Corners became Gwinnett's newest city 13 years ago, which is when it decided to outsource police services, says City Manager Brian Johnson.
Some people have good experiences, bad experiences.
There isn't a lot of crime in Peachtree Corners, Johnson says, and the city of around 50,000 people continues to attract new residents and businesses, like at the Forum and Town Center, where we met up over the summer. However, he says,
we have had instances, doesn't happen all the time, but we've had instances where there's no police officers inside our city limits to respond.
Gwinnett collects around $9 million a year from Peachtree Corners for police protection, but due to the ongoing officer shortage in the department, Johnson says officers are often pulled away to address high-priority calls in other areas.
I think we need to really think about this.
That's Robin, a Peachtree Corners resident who didn't share her last name while speaking at a town hall last week.
I personally am not for a police department here. I think Gwinnett County does an incredible job.
Others, including Johnson, agree, but for resident Richard Chambers, it's about taking action to prevent crime.
Yes, we're safe, pretty safe now, but I think the world is getting a little bit more dangerous every day. And if you don't believe that, maybe you need to start looking at more news articles.
The city has already paid 3 city marshals on its own dime to fill gaps in service, but that's led to issues with Gwinnett not sharing dispatch information with them. If the Peachtree Corners City Council votes for a new police department, they'll need to give Gwinnett a 4 years heads up and increase the millage rate. Shemaine Cruz, WABE News.
The Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and its musicians have reached a labor deal with a 3-year collective bargaining agreement. Summer Evans had more.
Members of the American Federation of Musicians Atlanta chapter have agreed on a new contract. This includes wage increases of 15% over 3 years, the addition of 2 positions to the orchestra, and an overhaul of the audition and tenure review procedures. 88 musicians play in the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra under the leadership of music director Nathalie Stutzman. Jennifer Barlament, the executive director of the ASO, says, quote, "This new contract both preserves the ASO's financial stability and recognizes how much we value our musicians." This agreement comes just in time for the start of the 2025-2026 season on October 3rd. Summer Evans, WABE News.
And finally today, researchers have discovered 2 new species of bass in Georgia. WABE's environment reporter Marissa Mecki had the story.
The Bartram's bass and Altamaha bass have long been considered synonymous with the red-eye bass. But according to ecologist Bud Freeman, he knew the first time he saw them that something was different. It was back in the 1980s when he was working as a fishing guide.
I went to pick this couple up, and they were fishing. I knew they were fishing. And so I'm a fish guy, right? I'm an ichthyologist. And I said, what'd you catch?
In their cooler was a bronze and olive-colored fish, now known as a Bartram's bass. But proving the scientific difference between these species and the red-eye bass took years of complicated genetic research.
Part of the art across that period of time is just the changes in technology and the ability to generate data that you'd like to inform your question.
Freeman and researchers at the University of Georgia found these two distinct bass species live in rivers like the Altamaha, Savannah, and Ogeechee. He says the new fish species celebrate Georgia's biodiversity. The state is third in the country for number of freshwater fish.
So this is a really diverse hotspot, and I think we don't realize generally, we grow up here, the streams are muddy, and we think, well, what could be living in here?
But Freeman says there's still room for new discoveries. Marissa Mecki, WABE News.
That's all for the show this week. My thanks to the WABE News team for all the great work. You can get more at WABE.org. Also, check out our WABE News Instagram, where we have our original news videos and stories. I'm Alex Helmick. Thank you for supporting WABE and for listening to The Week in Review.